Hello and welcome. It's Throwback Attack time once again, and this time we have a very special guest. We're going to head back to 90s CITV and a long-running comedy featuring an American boy and his alien chum. So cast your mind back to CITV in the 90s. One of the most popular shows at the time was the sci-fi comedy Mike Angelo, all about a young boy called Mike, whose best friend was Angelo, a crazy, juggling, ceiling-walking humanoid alien who crash-landed in Mike's home after escaping his home planet, which was self-destructing, in his spaceship which could morph into a wardrobe. It ran for an amazing 12 series on CITV, and today I'm chatting with none other than Angelo himself. It's Tim Whitnall. Hello.
Hello, Jack. Gosh, what a succinct and beautifully put introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
Thinking, he's absolutely right.
That's exactly what the show was about. It was crazy.
Yes, I've got a feeling I might be wrong about all this, and if I promise you I'm not drunk, but I think it still holds the record for the longest-running children's drama on CITV. I think it's second only to the Sooty Show in terms of longevity, but when I first got involved, I know that I inherited the role from Tyler Butterworth. Producer actually said to me, "Oh, you might get a year out of this," and suddenly an entire decade passed. I started the series with hair and ended very much without it. So, yeah, gosh, that's amazing. Thank you. It's put it into focus for me. That's great.
No problem. We'll talk more about it in just a little bit, but what I want to start off with is a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into acting.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky. I really won my first ever acting job. I'd always wanted to perform, and I was a bit of a rascally mimic. I used to do impressions of the teachers at school and various members of my family, and I sort of ended up doing my family all rather academic and ended up in very sensible jobs, but I wanted to run away and join the circus, so I was very young when I started working. But what actually happened was that I'd been a member of the local drama club, after school drama works and workshops and all that sort of stuff. And in the summer of 1977, my hero, Elvis, died, which is, it's a bit of a non sequitur, but there we go. He passed away, and within a few weeks of his death, my mum actually heard the director and the producer, Jack Good, being interviewed on Radio 4, and he was looking for the third Elvis to play Elvis Presley in his musical in the West End in London. So he'd already signed two others and was looking for someone to play the young Presley. So, yep, I came to London. I auditioned in the rain in my school blazer with my little school guitar, and I got the job on the spot. And it was one of the few jobs I ever got on the spot, I have to say. I thought it always worked like that. I was wrong. But after, a few more auditions, I actually ended up getting the role. And so I was very lucky. I sort of won a job very much like you would do now through a TV talent show like Britain's Got Talent, for example, or something like that. And ended up sort of then having to learn the business after a fairly auspicious start. The show did really well. It won several awards, and it sort of was a catapult really into what I wanted to do. So I'd had a career in music theatre, and I did a lot of various roles in TV dramas and things like that. So it was pretty much a question of learning how the business works and how to perform and how to conduct a professional sort of career. And that's really what I was doing up to the point when I got cast in Mike Angelo. So big start, good start. Then I slowly went back and learned how to do it properly and behave myself. So that's how I ended up playing, auditioning for Mike Angelo.
Good stuff. I mean, I've seen some videos online of yourself, and this probably relates to the Elvis musical. I've seen some videos of yourself online performing covers of 50s and 60s songs on various TV shows. What was all that about?
Right. Well, from the Elvis musical, there was a kind of real culture in retro shows. So you had big hits with things like Grease, the movie Grease. I ended up in the stage show of that. I did quite a few sort of, why am I calling them sort of? They were homages to I guess they're called jukebox musicals. I did shows like Yakety Yak, only in America. So I had a sort of reputation for performing that music. It was music that I loved, and it was music that I felt comfortable performing, and I guess I had a penchant for it. So those clips that are on the YouTube that friends mercilessly dig up and send to me, because I really love seeing images of myself at 17, not with hair by Buick, as they used to say. They came from shows like I did a TV show called Oh Boy from ATV in Birmingham. So they're clips from shows that I did that were sort of spin-offs from musical theatre work that I was doing. And I was very lucky. I got to perform with some of the best producers, composers, musicians, stars. But I think, as I said earlier, I was still very much learning. I was still only 17, 18 years old by then. So I was very much learning how it works and how you get work and what you do with your day. And not many people taught you that. You sort of had to learn it by your nose, really, and by your wits. So, yeah, those clips come from that period, really, of doing shows like Paul Daniels' Blackpool Bonanza. And, yeah, it was sort of last days of variety, really, in which I started my illustrious and dubious career. So that's my background, really, musical theatre, selfish, unapologetically. I'm very proud of it. And it seems like another life ago because it was such a long time ago, but also it's very different from what I do now. So, but I'm very grateful for it.
So, yeah, I was looking at some clips last night, and I have to say you do a very good rendition of Dream Lover.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, that's a lovely song. Bobby Darin, what a star.
It is a great tune. I do like some of those songs, actually. It is
Yeah.
good music. And so, yeah, the main reason we're here to talk is about Mike and Angelo. And you took over the role of Angelo from Tyler Butterworth, who did it for the first two series.
That's right. I did,
and, like you say, you played it for 10 years. So how did the role come about? Did you audition for it? And how did the audition go, kind of thing?
Yes, I did audition for it. And it's a very memorable audition because I'd been doing a show in Liverpool at the Playhouse Theatre, and I'd met a friend of mine back in London just for a walk and a cup of tea, and he was telling me about his friends, and this friend was an actor, and his friend was a writer, and his friend had just been commissioned by Thames Television to write episodes of this new show that he'd come up with, and it was Mike and Angelo, and it was brilliant. I was thinking, oh, great. I'd always wanted to write. So I was very congratulatory and I was very proud for him and everything else. And that was Grant Cathro, who co-devised the show with Lee Pressman. And then I sort of parked that for, it didn't go in one ear and out the other, but it was just a friend telling me about a friend. So it was on my radar. So a couple of years later, when the part came up for recasting, I knew about the show because Cal McChrystal, his name was, had told me about Grant and Lee's baby and how they'd developed it and got it commissioned as a series. So it was something that I'd known about. So I was very interested, and an agent called me up and said, look, would you be interested in it? And I think what really drew me to it was the fact that it was a part that really required you to use all the ammo in your arsenal, that it required you to develop your comic timing. I was able to use all my musical skills in it. I couldn't juggle beforehand, but boy, did I learn to juggle. And so did Michael Benz. The two of us just became obsessed with it. So all that stuff that the role required, and you also knew that you'd be working with fantastic guest artists every week. So it was something that I didn't think in a million years I'd get. I went along for the audition, and I say I remember it because although it was such a long time ago, I do remember going to the old Thames TV studios in the Euston Road and auditioning for it. I had to prepare it and learn a few scenes and do a bit of sleight of hand stuff and basically look at, dance around a bit. But the fire alarm went off right in the middle of my audition. So we were all absolutely consigned to the pavement outside in the busy Euston Road area. And I do remember the producer saying to me, that was a great audition. And I'm thinking, I only got halfway through it. So when they called me back, I was so relieved. And it was lovely because he actually said, look, we thought, we kind of knew we'd like you to do it. So they then gave me a second audition, which was on the Rainbow set. You remember Rainbow, Jack?
Yeah.
And I was so impressed with that, actually having to do, sell my wares on the rainbow set as part of the audition. But yes, it was a really memorable audition. And then I thought, it's funny, a lot of actors say this. I thought, I didn't do as well as I could have done. I didn't feel it went that brilliantly. And then I got a call about a week later saying that they'd like me to do it. So, yeah, it was a really happy time. And I went in, and the first episode I had to do the famous Doctor Who morphing from the previous Angelo into the present Angelo. And then I stayed there for 10 years. So it was great. I actually did get to work with Tyler for one episode. So, yeah, I'm really pleased I did that.
It was never mentioned, actually, why they changed Angelo's, apart from, like you say, the morphing. But there was never an explanation why Tyler decided to stop. But there we go.
Yes, I know. Well, I guess people move on and they get used to parts and things. I've had to do it when other things have come up and other work has come up. But yeah, I was very surprised that I got the part. And I think I really had to grow into it as well. I think at first I felt that it was something you really had to throw yourself at. And I'd come from roles in straight theatre, musical theatre, straight TV. I'd never really done comedy work before. And I think I also really loved that about the show, that it was, for all intents and purposes, it looked like a live sitcom, even though we had to shoot it because it had so many technical aspects to it, whether it was the special effects or the makeup. It looked and was presented very much as a straight half-hour sitcom. But yeah, it was a real learning curve and one I'm really proud of.
Good stuff. And yeah, like you say, it was it was like a sitcom, and there was a lot of technical aspects which we'll go on to in a moment. But one thing I want to know is when you were playing Angelo, because it was quite a wacky role, a lot of energy, physical comedy. Did you draw upon any of your own comedy influences? Did you have any that you used?
I absolutely did. That is a brilliant question. But it was about, I guess it was about 3 or 4 years before I started the show. I was very lucky to have seen Robin Williams working in a club in West Hampstead in London. And a friend of mine was a compere on the show, and he called me. I was just going to bed, and he'd said, "Get down here now. You will not regret it." And I think Robin came on stage at midnight. I remember that, actually. It was phenomenal because you could see that thing of total investment, total throwing yourself at something and having the belief in it that some of it was just so out there and some of it worked, some of it didn't work. Some of it was pure gold. I remember that. And I watched performers like Michael J. Fox doing the same thing in his work, where he was totally invested in it, and you could see that immersion and that commitment to it paying you back. So yes, it was that. I was a big fan of Python, so I guess, it was the first time, stay with this, Jack, it was probably the first time I'd ever done drag work, and I loved it.
Yes.
It was brilliant to be able to send pictures home to my mum in outfits far more glamorous than hers. I think I played Scarlett O'Hara in one episode. So it was a real sea change from going from these sort of cool, rather, I suppose you would call them worthier parts, into that thing where you had to really say, right, I'm going to park everything at the front desk of the studio and go for it. And that was new to me, really. That's a great question, because I really did think of comic influences when I was doing it, and I hoped I sort of was able to use that to the benefit of the show, really, because it was so well crafted. It was really well written, really well shot. It stretched all your abilities. It was a learning curve, working with actors like Ron Moody and James Ellis, and some fantastic performers like Christopher Biggins, Brian Murphy, who would come to the first read-through off the book. They'd learned every word of it. And it was just amazing watching that. And also, it was popular. I knew there was an audience for it. And it was an audience of between 4 and 5 million every week, which seems incredible now when you're looking at shows that are considered successful on 1-2 million viewers. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I will never, ever not be grateful for. That is a privilege to have been through that part. And it also belongs to, I think, an honesty and an innocence that children responded to. So if I didn't really throw myself at it, I'd have let everyone down. It was, at first I found that quite tricky. When I said it was a part that I had to grow into, I think that's one aspect of it. And that question really opens it up for me, that it was looking at other comics work and looking at comic actors' work in particular, something that I drew on a great deal.
Yeah, I have always liked physical comedy myself, and some of the people you mentioned, like Python. I like watching Python. Norman Wisdom, people like that, and
fantastic.
Angelo, in a way, reminds me of. And I know there's an episode where he pretends to be this particular actor. It reminds me of Jim Carrey a lot.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, because again, his career was in the it was very much in the early days of someone like that's career. But again, I remember going to see The Mask and thinking, that's it. That's what I want to try and do with it. And even though it's on a far less commercial scale and a smaller scale project, because sometimes you'd be asked to do something, and you would literally say to the mirror, "I've never done that." So it wasn't a comfort zone at all. Some of the impressions I did, I look back at them now, and some of them I think that's actually quite good. But others I look at and I think, oh gosh, and it's the same with the frocks and the costumes. I think I don't even remember wearing that. So you had to throw all your kind of inhibitions out the window with it. And again, I think that's good for an actor. I really do.
Definitely. Kind of reminds me of a way like the Bugs Bunny cartoons, how he'd suddenly have all these costumes and he'd drag up and people would not notice that there's a rabbit under there, just be false. There's all these people who turn up out of nowhere all look the same, but just in a dress that people fall for in the show.
Well, Mel Blanc's Humphrey Bogart impression was a lot better than mine, but I loved doing that. It was great. Yeah.
It did look like a blast to do, and it was great to watch.
Yeah, it was a blast to do. It was. And it was also, I think, a time when I'd not done rep theatre, but it was almost like that for 10, 12 weeks of the year, you would learn the first step, spend 4 days honing it, polishing it. Literally, you'd run it in live action. So when you did your producer's run just before you went to the studio, you did run it in sequence and you did run it in time. I know I said it was disjointed when you shot it because it had to be by virtue of its technical aspect. But when you did it as a run, it was such an exciting thing, and then you'd park it, go to bed, think I'm shooting this tomorrow. But then, of course, come the next night, and you'd been in the studio from 5 a.m, and you'd have to forget that one, wipe the hard disk, and then it was on to the next one. And I thought that was such a brilliant way of working, and that is something that I'm so glad I went through that, because I'm not so sure that really exists anymore. It certainly doesn't within children's television or children's drama, certainly. And there were many, many great shows that did that as well, that came before it and after it.
Definitely. And going on to the technical aspects, there's one in particular which was a mainstay of the show from pretty much day one, was the walking on the ceiling that Angela used to do. And I remember being in awe of that as a child, and I said this to you off. You're laughing.
I'm in awe of it too, because I remember... Oh, wow. Yeah.
I said this to you just before we recorded this, that as a young child, I was so in awe of it that I tried to replicate it by attaching sellotape to my shoes. Funnily enough, it didn't work.
I'm now issuing a public disclaimer. Jack, I'm not responsible. You can't come after me now. Please. No, but seriously, it was difficult to do it. And I know it's not a trade secret because it appeared in TV Times at the time, but it was amazing. I think... we had an incredible designer on it called Alex Clark, and he came up with this device. I think someone told me it was used in a Fred Astaire.
It was, yeah, Fred Astaire.
Oh, go on.
And I have seen the clip. It's a film. I've not seen the film, but I've seen the clip. I think it's called Royal Wedding, and it was in the 50s.
Royal Wedding, that's right, yeah.
And of course, Lionel Richie used it as well in the Dancing on the Ceiling music video as well. Yeah,
he did. Mm-hmm. So it's an enormous, great steel drum, and in that you build the wall, the ceiling, 2 walls, the ceiling and the floor of a room. You stand in that, and the drum rotates around you while the camera locks off on you. So the room comes to your feet rather than you walking around it. So when it's when it's shown back, then you just see the camera's eye view. But it took a bit of getting used to. So yes, and then of course, oh, by the way, while you're up there, juggle a few balls for us, will you? So there you go. That's what I mean about stretching you. So I loved doing that. It was brilliant.
It did look good, and it was funny really because they used the same clip for the whole run of the show from from when you started up until when it finished.
I know. Well, I could only do it once. I think it's not that easy to do. I have to. I'm going back. Gosh, years and years. But I do remember lurching and thinking, no, come on, you've got to look smooth. Fred Astaire would have looked smooth. So
he had to tap dance while doing it, so,
Oh, he was. Oh, okay, yeah, all right. Come on, I juggle.
You juggled, and it did look cool, actually.
Yeah.
And somebody actually uploaded to YouTube a documentary to a while back, and it was like the behind the scenes of Mike and Angelo, and they actually show the clip of you doing the ceiling walk as they turn the giant set around. It's almost like a big hamster wheel kind of thing.
Grief. I've never seen that. Yes, I do remember there was again, we're going back to an era where there was schools TV.
That was what it was, yes.
I do remember them coming in and shooting something. So it may well have Jack, I'm not sure. But I've never seen it. I'd love to see it. But they did come in and shoot the hamster wheel. Yeah, that's right, they did. Those things go back to another time when, funny enough, I was down there this morning. I live very near where the old Thames TV studios used to be at Teddington Lock. It was just so productive down there. It was probably the nearest thing that ITV had to the BBC TV centre, because they had buildings, as I've said, in the West End. They had buildings all over London, but they had this beautiful studio right on the lock at Teddington. And I had worked there. Gosh, I'd been a guest on Magpie, and I'd even worked as an illustrator on a show called We'll Tell You a Story. I did a musical drama there called The All Electric Amusement Arcade as an actor. So I had a real passion for and a love for and an affinity with Thames TV, and I still do. Unfortunately, it's knocked down. They've built this huge complex of Thameside living luxury flats. But I do remember that time of working there as being magical, and I would go down to the canteen and there'd be Morecambe and Wise having their lunch and Kenny Everett, and it was just a wonderful creative time. So Mike and Angelo, I think it was the first 2 series I did, it may have been more, was actually shot at the Thames TV studios. So I could cycle to work like a lucky boy.
Very lucky
But
indeed.
I do have cherished very fond memories of it. And actually I was working at Thames when the company lost their franchise as part of the broadcast shake-up. So it was a very sad day. So I was very happy to work there, and Mike and Angelo is very much part of that period and that work, that body of work for me.
Certainly part of the history, and like you say, a golden age, and most of the TV studios have now gone, like Thames has. BBC Television Centre's now a block of flats.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
And stuff like that. I mean, even up here where I am, ATV Central's long gone, and it's all.
Oh, I had fantastic times at ATV and at Central, and both in Birmingham and at Lenton Lane in Nottingham, and did some really great shows there, and I had a very happy working relationship with ATV. And you can't. I don't know if it's sad to look back sometimes, because again, the Thames TV thing. It was just a beautiful building as well, and the club was right on the river. I remember sitting with Mike Benz one night having a drink and looking down and just thinking, God, life doesn't get much better than this. It's great, and it's my job.
Yes.
So, anyway.
And one of the things you mentioned a little earlier on, and I was surprised actually, is that you said that you had to learn juggling for the show. You couldn't juggle before.
I did.
I wouldn't have guessed, because you did it so well.
Oh, thank you. Because actually it was something that I really wanted to get right. And it's funny because when Mike Benz joined the show, he played Mike Mason in the sort of middle section of the show, and such a lovely young guy, and has had a great career since, Mike and Angelo. But he was like a sponge, whether it was learning a scene. I was mesmerized by his talent at sight reading, learning. And he just said to me, I've got to learn that. He saw me juggling and said, I've got to do that. And within about 3 days, was 10 times the juggler I ever was. So it was a brilliant thing to do. Yeah. And I taught myself to do it. And I had a couple of street performer friends I know who showed me how to do it. The best tip I got was to do it over a bed. Practice over a bed, because you're going to drop the balls so many times it stops you from bending down too many times. And that was a brilliant tip. And it also stops what's called the juggler's run or the juggler's walk, which is you tend to walk towards the balls as you start juggling them. So there you go. There are 2 priceless tips for you.
Thank you. And to be fair, the show did inspire me to want to learn juggling, but it wasn't until about the age of 16 that I actually managed to learn to do it. And
You did it.
Yeah, and My mum, I think, wishes that I hadn't picked it up because I am. Because you say about dropping the balls, well, yeah, and I've got the professional acrylic ones, which are a lot harder, so they make a racket
Yes.
when they're dropped on
Boom,
the floor.
boom,
Yeah.
boom.
So she's like, "Well, you stop doing that."
At least you didn't have to fall off the ceiling with sellotape on your boots.
Oh
Right?
yeah, of course.
You didn't put sellotape on the board. No, cheating.
No,
No, but it was a brilliant skill to have, and actually I've used it since on a couple of things. But Mike Benz was, he could smoke me with the 3-ball cascade and the shower and the reverse shower and the. Did you manage to get up to 5 balls?
No, I can only do 3, but I can do the reverse cascade and a few other bits just
That's
about.
a nice throw, yeah.
And,
well, Mike could do. I think Mike got up to 4 balls, but he was really good at it, yeah, and it was great.
Yeah, because it was featured in the opening titles as well. And I remember there was. This is going to sound really anarchy, but I remember there was one series of Mike and Angelo where, in the title sequence or in the credits, you kind of running up and down a set of stairs while juggling. I seem to remember.
Gosh.
And you're wearing like sparkly jackets. I think it was a scene from an episode. And again, young me trying to replicate that. I think I ended up falling down the stairs attempting it. Oh God, the amount of things I copied off Mike and Angelo and various other CITV shows drove my mother mad.
Oh God, no! Again, I apologise firmly, and I reinstate that I had nothing to do. Turn up and tell me what to do. I'll turn up and do it. But yeah, no, that's lovely.
And with Mike and Angelo, it ran for a long time, and for a show that ran for a long time and was very successful, it had a lot of cast changes. There was a completely different cast at the end by the time it started. I mean, I'll go through it in sequence for those who don't know. So when it first started, there was Rita and there was the original Mike and Tyler Butterworth. Then you came in. Then the original Mike left, and there was a series without a Mike, and there was Ellie. I found out. I didn't know that one, but there was an Ellie who was next door.
That's right. Neighbour. Yes, it's all coming back to me now.
And then there was the blonde Mike Benz. And then Rita left and Katie came in, the housekeeper. And the blonde Mike was the nephew of Rita, and the first one was the son. So there's that thing.
My brain's gone now. That's
there's that many Mikes. And then some years later, Mike Benz left, and then there was Michaela, who was next door neighbour's niece, and then there was the final series with another Mike, who was the nephew of Katie. So that's
right.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. You thought politics was complicated, but
so,
it was a. I think also there was. It's a period where people had work and they were going to other jobs, and a lot of the actors were moving on to other things, and then. Fair play to the writers, to Grant Cathro and Lee Pressman and Alex Bartlett, who came in later, because that tension and that constant morphing was kind of been easy. And I know as a writer that's some of the plots were very complex and they look really easy, but something like the episode where, I think it's called, it's the one where Angelo plays, she's got a wonderful name in it, Tim Old Brain. No, she's got brilliant Tiara Thickerton-Plank, played by the brilliant Pippa Hayward, and Angelo plays her rather philandering fiance, a Terry Thomas alike. I think the episode is called "Come on, Tim, you can do it. Come on." It'll come back to me in the end. But anyway, that was so complex because Angelo taking the plunge. That's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And of course, poor Tiara's fiance is Angelo's double. So imagine that, and where that can lead to.
Yes.
So it was very, it was very heightened and very. Some of the plots were actually very, very complex, but brilliantly executed. So that when you had new people coming into it, they entered this kind of world where you were expected to go, okay, that's me. So I go there, that's it, that's fine. I'm that person and that, but this happens. Oh, and by the way, then you'll be coming through the cupboard at warp speed 9 and you'll have to interview a librarian from Planet Tharg. So that everyone seemed to fit into it really beautifully. And everyone really, do you know what? Every actor says this, but it was that kind of company where, we were very close. And if we ever saw each other now, it would probably seem like 10 minutes ago that we actually did see each other. So it was a very happy experience, and I don't think there were any sort of speed bumps in terms of those recasting possible recasting problems or anything like that. Everyone was just great, and they brought their own thing to it as well. So the Mikes were very different, the Mickeys were very different, and the storylines accordingly.
Yeah, it's cool that the show managed to carry on with the cast changes, and also, like I said, there was some series without a Mike. There was a couple of series without a Mike in it at all, but it was still called Mike and Angelo, so they still made it work.
Yes, there you go. Well, I think necessity is the mother of invention, and of course, Angelo is the king of invention. So they,
Yes.
Oh, that was a link.
Yes, there were some wonderful inventions on that show. The patent pending, this, that, and the other. I'm trying to think. There was always time machines that brought back historical figures.
Again, Alex just designed them so beautifully, and they did look like they could work, and they certainly felt like they could work. And if it was a question of bringing back William Shakespeare to help Angelo write a sitcom, which I remember, and brilliant actor Jasper Britton playing Shakespeare, it was just a joy working with him. And again, he's such a fine actor, and having to do those crazed heightened trade-offs with him was a real pleasure. But again, they were brilliant. I do remember one episode where Angelo had to play judge and jury in a court case, and of course that means there's loads of you. So again, I was learning how to work with eye lines, tape marks on the floor, and the thrill of the show, and it was another thrill of the show that endured, actually, seriously, Jack, was seeing it all edited together, because, of course, it was done in such a technical way that you never really got to see it in its whole until you watched it go out, and you never got preview copies. You didn't sit in the theatre and watch a preview or viewing of it, and some of it was just breathtaking. And some of the directors we had, like Neville Green, it was just incredible that he would storyboard each show. I used to love looking at Neville's storyboards, because they were done like cartoon strips. And I think I'm right that he was an art student, and I think he was a contemporary of David Hockney and David Oxterby at Bradford, and you could see that in his work. It was so well prepared, and how he envisaged everything eventually gluing together and being edited was breathtaking. So you'd see the inventions was how they work, and how suddenly William Shakespeare would walk through the door, and it was just lovely. Yeah, it was a real pleasure.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Really.
And so, are you in touch with any of the cast still that was on the show, like regularly? Still friends?
Well, I am, because I ended up dating and being with Katie Murphy's sister, who has been the love of my life for 22 years.
I did wonder with the surname, actually. And when I asked to interview you, she said, "Ask Tim how we met," and it's just come back to me now.
Jack, she's very keen to get top billing, so I get to see Katie pretty much all the time.
Oh, fantastic!
Mike, I do see, and we bump into each other. I do owe him, or he owes me, a beer, according to the emails. I'm not sure which way round it is now, but it was a total thrill to see him in Joker last year.
I didn't know till afterwards. I didn't
Brilliant.
spot.
I didn't like seeing him getting murdered, but I was so thrilled to see him. And I do know his career has been great, and he has, I think, after Mike and Angelo, and of course he played Lord Fauntleroy in the brilliant BBC Sunday evening drama version. He went back to RADA, and he learned the craft, and he has done brilliantly. And then he joined the RSC, and one occasion, which was beautiful, I was in Liverpool working at the Royal Court Theatre back in 2008, and it was a really rainy night, and we'd all gone for a drink after the show, and there was Mike. He was doing an RSC tour, so we ended up having a fabulous evening together, and a tour of various bars that I was able to help him with, historically, of course, landmarks, and we caught up. So yes, I do occasionally bump into him and see him and hear what he's up to, and I know he's gone from strength to strength. I know he did a play on Broadway last year, I think it was, possibly the year before, with Cynthia Nixon, and he also was in the West End version of with David Suchet, The Importance of Being Earnest. So yeah, it's great. He's done really well.
Fantastic stuff. Oh, that's really great to hear. I like that.
Yeah, it's great. And of course, I see a lot of the character actors that are in it, and yeah, I bump into them on my travels. So yeah, we do. We sort of, yes, so I can't get away from Katie Murphy. There you go. And I was a huge fan of Katie Murphy's before Mike and Angelo, and I had to pinch myself because I was such a fan of Tutti Frutti, the show that she was in with Richard Wilson. It was brilliant. And so when she walked into the rehearsal room on, as you say, one of the big cast changes, I was well chuffed. But if you'd have said to me I'd have ended up with a sister, I wouldn't have believed it. There you go, Anna. I've mentioned now. There you go.
Great stuff, great stuff. And I think the era of the show with Katie and Mike Benz was the best era. I think that was the when the show
that's lovely.
peaked.
Yeah, good. Oh, thank you.
All
good.
of it was good,
I
but that
do
was my
too,
favourite era
yeah.
of it, I think, yeah.
I think when I was saying earlier that I had to find my groove, I think with that cast and that team that I did. And it was the sort, for me, I agree with you actually, Jack, from a personal point of view. It was when the show was really singing and firing on all cylinders. And again, you learn a lot from a comic actress like Katie, and it was great. And I know Mike and I really loved working together, and the three of us did. So I agree with you. Yeah, thank you.
No problem. And it also got a lot wackier as well by that point. It was just it started off as kind of like a drama with comedy in it, and then it just became a full-on wacky
actually.
comedy.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Of course, a lot of people don't know or forget that Elizabeth Estenson, who's still in Emmerdale after so many years as Diane Sugden, played the next door neighbour, Daphne Fawkes Bentley, which I remember Angela always used to get wrong. Daphne Fawkes-Bender and stuff like that, and Daphne
Hello, Mrs. Fawkes-Bender. Hello, Mrs. Fawkes-Bender. Yes, and I loved working with Liz.
Yeah.
She's great. And also, again, that thing of true comic timing and working with someone like that who can do something with a withering glance that most people couldn't do with, a full soliloquy. She was just so brilliant at that. And again, a joust between the characters. And I remember her being on the Live of Birds, of course. And so, it was a real thrill to work with Liz. Yeah, it's great.
Marvellous. And it was on as well earlier about like all the different actors that had the occasional appearances in. I mean, like you said, Ron Moody. And also the likes of Biggins and John Savardant as well. All appeared in it.
Oh, I loved working with John. He was fantastic. And again, the comic timing was brilliant. And you'd be watching him doing his thing, and he was wonderful. And he was such a great guy, larger than life. Probably one of the best dressed men I've ever met. He was so eloquent and dapper and beautiful, and he was. And then you'd put on Turner Classic Movies, and there he would be with Laurence Olivier in the Battle of Britain. So you'd think, "Come on, Whitnall, raise your game. Come on." But yeah, he was brilliant, and of course he was wonderful in Coronation Street. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually mentioning Christopher Biggins, that's one of the, going back to favourite episodes, I think there was 2 episodes where you played a character called Hank Sinatra, a singing cowboy. That was fantastic.
I'd forgotten that. God, you're good. Blimey.
Well, that was one of the episodes I had on a tape for years. It wasn't the one with Christopher Biggins. I didn't see that one until it came on YouTube a little while back. But I had the one that was a few series later where he does an ice cream advert as Hank Sinatra, and he loses his voice.
That's right. I think I had to write a little song for that.
Which is very good. I think I still remember the words to it, actually. But the first one, it's like a kind of a rip-off of Stars in Their Eyes, isn't it? And you go on and do that.
Oh, well, Lee Bresman, bless him. As I said earlier, we both love music, and he'd come up with these mad ideas and say, "There's the lyrics. Go and put a tune to it." So I had this little home studio, and the composers actually were gracious enough to let me actually have a go at writing a few songs. So I think I wrote one which was something about Cricklewood, which was a sort of Anchors Away type song. And I remember Lee gave me the lyric, which was brilliant, which was "See our ickle stick of wood on the end." So it was all kind of very And but the ice cream one was great. It was sort of a Buddy Holly type tune. I remembered recording it upstairs in my old home studio. Yes, and. But Hank Sinatra, of course, I'd forgotten that. I think my favourite ever character name, because they came up with brilliant ones, he was a character played by John Barden in one of the earlier episodes called Aubrey Hepburn.
That's great.
So, that is brilliant. And as I say, tiara thicker than plank. I loved her.
Yes.
She was brilliant. But they did come up with some wonderful titles and wonderful names. But Hank Sinatra.
I know.
I've got a feeling that might have been our last show.
I
the
think
one
it
with
was
the
the
ice
last
cream.
one because the one with because like I said, the first one was with Biggins and it was the stars in their eyes, and then there was
That's
the one
right,
where
yeah.
he brought him back to do an ice cream advert, and I believe it was the last one. And that episode always used to get me in fits of giggles, and I used to. If I ever had like friends around, or sometimes when I used to go to school, I used to bring videos for people to watch, and I put that on, and the bit where he loses his voice, and
That's
they put
right, because he eats the ice cream, or he's allergic to ice cream.
and they put a tape
Yeah.
on for him to mime to, but they play at the wrong speed.
That's right, yeah.
That used to
Yes.
crack me up every day. In fact, it still does.
And, it's great because it's brilliant talking to you, Jack, because it sounds really disingenuous, but when you've done 100 shows, it's lovely little things like this that prod the memory, and it brings it back to you, and you think, God, did I do that? That's amazing. It's
Yes.
brilliant. And I do remember the actor, I think it's Peter Banks on that, who played the ice cream baron.
Mr.
And he
Huckleberry.
was fantastic, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely wonderful. But it was great, that episode. And so that was literally, that song was the swan song.
Yeah.
But there you go, yeah.
There was some good music on the show. In fact, the theme tune I think was fantastic. The
it's lovely.
twangy, banjo-y one. You know what I'm on about.
Yeah, banjo-y one. Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Yeah,
I like that.
and I still see the composers of that in their studio in London. So there's a connection there. Yeah,
Very nice. Did you know that the theme tune to Mike Angelo has been involved in a viral YouTube video in the last couple of years?
The short answer to that, Jack, is no. I didn't know that. Tell me more, dear. Tell me more.
I know nothing about football. My knowledge of football is zilch. So you might know more and understand the gag than I do. But there's a video that came online about 8 years ago called Roy Hodgson's Musical Walkabout. Right. And it's
I'm going to be writing this down.
It's an animation of Roy Hodgson walking on a series of increasingly bizarre backgrounds. It starts off with like Liverpool. I know he was manager for Liverpool at some point. I know that. Yeah. And then it kind of
he's walking really well. Really well.
He's walking in space across a desert. And this 90-second video, the music is a looped version of the Mike Angelo theme. And there's lots of comments of people going, I know where this is from, but I can't put my finger on it.
No. That's amazing. Well, I didn't know that at all. And it begs the question, why did they actually go with that?
I've no idea, but I think it's got something like over 100,000 hits so far. So yeah, I don't know, but
you are a mine of information. I know more about it than I do.
Well, there was also a great video about 2 years back. There's a guy on YouTube who does covers of TV themes on the piano, and in the one where he does Mike and Angelo, he does like a split screen effect so he can appear in the video twice. So while he's playing the theme on the piano, he's got like his other self on upside down juggling behind him as like a tribute.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, well, rock and roll to him.
I think it's called Piano Bash or something like that. It is good. It is good.
It's funny. When I did the show, I've often told people this, and they just don't get it at all. But when I was involved in the show, which would have been from, I think it was 89, 1990 to 2000, I remember that. I very, very rarely, if at all, got recognised by the audience, by children, or by their parents. But it was only really comparatively recently that I would be stopped in a bank or a shop, and somebody, I guess your age, would say, "Are you that mad guy from that show?" And, they didn't know my name, or they didn't know, but they'd recognise or associate me with it. And the only thing I can think of was that it was such a heightened show, and it was so out there, and that children genuinely believed there was an alien called Angelo somewhere. It's a funny old thing. It's not something that I guess you'd really understand unless you'd lived through it. And it really was. I would be in the supermarket and someone would say, "You're mad, you are. I've seen you on that show." And it was a long, long time after the fact. So I guess that probably explains why someone would articulate Roy Hodgson.
I have no idea.
With the music from their generation, I guess. I don't know.
I've no idea, but it is out there.
Thank you, Jack. That's great. Yeah.
So the show ran for so many years, and how did, I mean, I know it ran for a very long time and you had a good time doing the show. How did you feel when the show finished and when it ended, and did you know when you were doing the last one that it was going to be the last one?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think, given that the show was a true survivor, it survived. I was talking earlier about the demise of Thames Television, and then it jumped to an independent production company called Tetra Films, who got it, and we moved from various studios and various production houses. So we filmed at London Weekend, their studios. We filmed at Fountain Studios in Wembley. So it did feel slightly like a provincial tour almost, that we were hoping for the next venue, hoping for the next commission. And to be fair, when I first started it, it was really something that I thought I might have done for a series. I'd have been jolly lucky to have got 2 series from it, and of course I did. The idea of it, with myself having run 10 series, and the series overall having run 12, would have just seemed so kind of out there at the time. And it did. The show kept coming back and back when we thought that would be the last one anyway, because there were all sorts of mitigating factors and external influences that spelt the end of the show. It was unlikely that it would come back because there was a personnel change or a regime change at the broadcaster. It survived all kinds of things. So when it kept coming back and back and back each winter, it was a real joy. And I combined it with my theatre work and my other work and my writing work and my voice work. So it was something that I always felt really lucky that it came back at all. And we were told once or twice this will be the last series, and then blow me down, it came back again. So never say never, I suppose, was the attitude. But I do know that when we did the last one, to answer your question, that we were told that was it, and it'd been a great run. And, you know, I was free now to get my head shaved for the first time ever, which was liberating at the wrap party, I can tell you. And the dear makeup staff who put me in the chair said, "Come on, Witters, it's coming off," and gave me a 0 cut to attend the party. And I went to the party in a lovely brand new blue petrol suit and a buzz cut, and nobody said a thing. So I felt incredibly liberated, and it stayed the same since. But yeah, so we were aware that would be the last of it, and I think we were a little bit sort of sad to see it go. And it's chats like this that make me realise how blooming lucky I was, and I really mean that. I really do. And I was saying to you earlier that I have been told since that, you know, I went through what's known as a golden age of children's television, and I certainly think that I was at the tail end of that, looking back now, that it was really lucky to be part of a really active, vibrant, successful commissioning period where great TV dramas were made for children, great comedy was made for children, imaginative Saturday morning TV was made for kids. But nobody ever said, you know, these are children's programs. We watch them as families. Adults love watching them. Students would watch them. You know, people. It was very democratic, and it was also ecumenical. It went right across the age span. I remember loving Saturday morning kids TV into my 30s. You know, and it's true. I've got a brilliant book. I don't know if you've seen it. It's got a guy called Richard Lewis, and it's called The Encyclopedia of Cult Children's TV. And it's funny because Mike Angelo isn't in it. But I got this out because I knew I was speaking to you, and I thought I'd read you the last thing, because it sort of sums up the innocence and the honesty and the imagination that went into kids' telly. And it says, the Encyclopedia of Cult Children's Television will take you back to a better age. It will take you on a journey back to Chigley, to Moomin Valley, to Toy Town, high above the streets and houses, where it was all so honest and simple, where it was perfectly ordinary for a camp man in dungarees, a big woolly bear, a fey pink hippo, and a bitchy zipped-up gimp to get into bed with each other and sing a song. I just love that.
It's so true, though. It's so true.
That beautiful, self-effacing honesty and innocence. I think the end of that, just to answer your question, I think the end of that period, if I'm not too melodramatic about it, that I was feeling it, really. I was feeling that it was coming to the end of that. And of course now it's a very different world in which children can curate what they want to watch, and they can choose what they want to watch and build their own menus and move away from TV and go into online programming or their games. And that's something that I did feel at the end of Mike Angelo, that it was sort of moving away from terrestrial entertainment and into something very, very different.
Certainly, definitely. I do feel like I was the last generation to watch that terrestrial era before it. I mean, digital channels were about at the time, but just not as prominent as they are now.
As I said earlier, you talking about a rating that most TV shows would die for now. And I remember when I was a guest on Blue Peter, which I guested on a couple of times to promote some musical theatre that I was involved in. The very first time I did Blue Peter as a guest, I came off and Biddy Baxter, the legendary producer, told me that 11 million people had just watched it. And I think it was a time when children's television certainly was really enjoyed by the whole family. And you'd go from something like Blue Peter, and then the goodies would be on, and it would ease into adult programming into the evening. And so by the end of it, and I think the last show was in 2000, I might be wrong, but I think it was.
I believe it was as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think it had reached the natural end of its life, but it's something that I'll always be really proud of and really happy to have been involved in.
Fabulous. And we were talking about it just before we recorded it, but you shared some lovely memories, actually. The very last series had a different Mike in it, played by Stephen Geller, and who unfortunately a couple of years ago, I found out, passed away. But you said that you were talking about how he was wonderful to work with, and you still own a present that he gave to you.
I do, dear Stephen. Yeah, I think his father was a dealer in bespoke high-end hi-fi units. So, dear Stephen very kindly did Katie Murphy and I a deal where we got the state-of-the-art sound systems, and I still have mine, and I'd never play it without thinking of Stephen. And he was an absolute dream, and he was a lovely guy to work with. And again, the children we had on it were brilliant because they were all really professional and really loved doing the show, and we had some great laughs as well. And it was fun, actually, because I think it had to be fun. It was hard work as well, but it had to be fun in order to honour the spirit of the show. And of course, Angelo really, realistically, as a character, is a perpetual child. He's learning, he's wide-eyed, everything needing to be learnt. He's an alien. He's from another planet where on Earth things are, very different from how they are where he comes from, where someone will chase him through time and space to remind him he owes some time on a library book that's overdue.
I've seen that episode. That's a good one, that.
I love that. And again, an actor like Gareth Marks in it, he was so brilliant in it. But yeah, so I think there is an element of that innocence and that wide-eyed thing that I really wanted to preserve in the show. And I got on really well with all the kids that we had on it. And yeah, dear Stephen, I'm really sorry to hear the sad news about Stephen. And I only found out comparatively recently. So, devastating, awful.
Yeah, certainly. But one thing you mentioned just, and I've got to ask now, you said about the buzz cut. So did you hate having that hairstyle?
Well, unfortunately, I've inherited male pattern baldness from my mother's side of the family, so there wasn't very much I could do about it. But no, every year when it was dyed red and pulled through a comb for Angelo, it was a challenge. But yeah, it's funny really. I just had to put up with it, and then I promise you this is true. On the very last show, wonderful, the makeup artists on it, Sally Hennon and Viv Gunsey said, "Right, we're going to shave that." It was brilliant, and they checked. They were very professional. They checked with the producer. Have you finished with Tim? Yes, that's it. In fact, I still remember someone saying, "That's it for good," and they marched me into the makeup room and gave me a buzz cut. So there you go.
That's a great story.
It. Yeah.
And,
I've got a permanent haircut courtesy of Mike Angelo.
And another thing you were saying to me just before we recorded this is we were on about CITV, like when it was in Birmingham, and you said that you appeared on it a few times to be interviewed, and was good fun.
Yes, I did. It was amazing. I got the train up to New Street, and I remember it being really nerve-wracking because it was absolutely live, and it had to be live. So I would sit there with Stephen and Daniela and and they'd be chatting about what I was up to and who I knew, and we'd be swapping notes, and then suddenly the red light would go on, and we'd be live to the nation. So you had to be on your mettle, really. But I was amazed at how professional it was, and how it was a kind of cross between being really relaxed and being really sort of acutely aware that you were going live to the nation. So, yeah, it was great. And of course, that's gone, I think, hasn't it? Now I think there's a CITV presence digitally. I haven't checked it out, but I think there is a.
There is, and they actually did about. It was in 2013 for their 30th anniversary. They did a weekend of classic shows, and the very first show that they shown, guess which one it was?
It was.
No. Mike Angelo. Yeah, they shown 2 episodes, one with Tyler and one with yourself, back in 2013, and I was up first thing in the morning to watch both of them. I was mega excited.
Well, thank you very much. That's really lovely, actually, and yeah, it was great because you'd be sitting there, and then obviously they had lots and lots of different guests going up, and you'd be sitting there and then cue your own program, which was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then you come out of it and they'd say, and here he is, and here they are. And I do remember going up to do shows with Mike Benz I think we did What's Up Doc, and we did the Disney Club, and we certainly did Take Two with Philip Schofield, just to promote the show and, to publicise the show. So you got to meet some amazing people and work with some amazing people. And I'm not just saying this, it was a really exciting time as well, because you felt part of a very busy, productive and creative industry. And there was all the channels had kids programming, and quite right too. And, as I say, it's not something that I'm involved with anymore, but I'm really pleased that I just experience that sort of the tail end of the golden age, as it were.
Absolutely. So the final Mike Angelo question: do you think it should be released on DVD?
I absolutely do, and I know people will think, because he wants the money, but that's not the case. I tell you why I'd love it to be released, because it's a body of work that I believe in, that I'm proud of, and I'd love to have a really nice high definition copy of it, because my acting career exists, and it took place at a time when actually all you really got was a dodgy old VHS copy or a very snowy Sony or Betamax copy of my original work. So when I do see things online, I'm amazed that people have archived them or collect them or curated them. But it would be lovely to have some, and as you say, things like, if there was a documentary crew present, which there was, and if there were little extras like the CITV links or our appearances on various CITV shows, I would love that. I would love to see that. And apart from anything else, I think it would just be great fun to go through them and think, wow, what was I doing there? Well, gosh, wow. And to remember things that I've completely forgotten, really. It'd be great to see them. So, yes, come on, network. Stick it out.
Definitely.
But I have heard sort of periodically over the years that it had been considered and they were looking at things. And when you see what is being released on DVD, one can live in hope, I guess, because there are things that even I loved from my childhood. There's a brilliant children's drama called The Intruder with Milton Johns. It's an absolutely brilliant thriller. I think it was on Sunday evenings. An ITV show, and it was scheduled for DVD release in, I think, 29 or something, and it still hasn't come out. And I keep looking all the time, thinking, please, circumvent all copyright issues, and I want it very much. And there's one episode, I think, on YouTube. So yes, so hopefully, if enough people write these or write, petition online or tweet, we might get to see it. I'd love that. That'd be great.
Definitely. I mean, there was an event at the BFI last summer about 90s Kids TV, and one of the shows that they put on the big screen for a few seconds was Mike and Angelo, which was incredible to see on a big cinema screen for everyone to see.
BFI member, I didn't know about that.
What? Last July, I think it was. Yeah, last July.
I didn't know that. I'd love to. I have. Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, maybe, as I say, maybe there's enough, as people seem to be remembering the show fondly, they might do something. Someone might do something
Fingers
about
crossed.
it.
Hopefully. And
Yeah.
so to kind of wrap things up, since Mike and Angelo, I know that you've done a lot of voice work in a lot of kids' TV. A lot of
Yes,
people don't know that you were the narrator of the Teletubbies as well.
I was. I was
Yes.
the original narrator of the
Mhm.
Teletubbies. I could calm my sister's children, who were growing up at the time, by looking at them and saying, "One day in Teletubby land, something appeared from far away," and they'd look at me with a cocked head, and they're, "What the hell? What?" so it was again. That was another job. I thought, gosh, I'll never get this. There were about 50 other actors in the queue behind me, I think, and yeah, it was an amazing thing to be involved in, and I think that's really what I'm trying to say. That because to be a part of a success, anything like that, anything that is successful on whatever level, and of its own merits and anything else, it's a treat and it's a privilege. And I remember that show, just people have forgotten now, but it created a furore back in 1997 when it first came out, and there were accusations that it was dumbing children down and subverting language and all these kind of crazy things. And guess what? It's still being made. So
It certainly
it
is.
was an amazing thing to be part of the first wave of that. And I got, actually, this is true, 4 of the very, very first cuddly soft toys that came off the production line that Christmas, because they were rarer than hen's teeth, and they created sort of, chaos at the supermarket tills. But I was very lucky. I got given a set, and I gave them to a hospice in Bury St Edmunds, where my parents lived, and they raffled them for their Christmas raffle that Christmas. But yeah, that was an amazing time. It was really exciting to see that show. It was the same. I remember that because David Dimbleby did these wrap-ups of the year, and he came live from Teletubby Land that year. I remember that. So you'll probably be able to see that on YouTube. David Dimbleby talking about the Spice Girls and the Teletubbies from Tubbyland.
Great stuff. And like I say, you've done voices on a lot of kids' shows in recent years, haven't
Yes, I have. Yes, it's been interesting work, and I've done shows like Thomas and Friends. A show called Underground Ernie, lovely little show called Tom and Vicky that I did with
remember that.
Richard Attenborough.
I remember that, yeah.
Mr. Men's show, which I loved doing. Rory the Racing Car with Peter Kay, which was fantastic fun. So that's kept me busy, and yes, that's good work. And of course, I've shifted really from my performing work into writing work, and that's what I really wanted to do all along, really, and I was very lucky to be able to do it in the end. So when I realised I could subsist and survive as a writer, I eased back on my performing work, and I could feel a collective sigh of relief throughout the industry. No, I decided to really concentrate on that, and I had to really, and I've been very lucky in that as well. So I can't complain.
Yes, and your production company is called Feather Productions, isn't it?
Feather Productions Limited, yes. And I co-run that with Anna Murphy, Katie Murphy's sister. And we have had quite a few things that have gone very well for us. And we like to start small. So we tend to produce small-scale theatre productions. If they work and if they're kind to people, then we can enlarge them and get them on a broader stage and a bigger stage. We've done some great work at the Edinburgh Festival over the last few years, and we're hopefully, after this terrible time, looking at a new feature film, which would be really good. So it's all systems go, but obviously waiting for a time when we can encourage people to feel confident and comfortable enough to come back to theatres. And it's I don't know how we're going to do that, and I know there are lots of people who are trying to consider and work out how to do that. So that has affected our work profoundly, but we'll keep going because we want to see the other side and, be on the other side with everybody.
Certainly, and all the best with that. And
thank you very, very much, Jack. Yeah.
No problem. And I know that you also wrote that Kenny Everett biography that was on a few years back, and I love that. I thought that was great.
You're really good, you are. Blimey. You've done your homework. Roy Hodgson, Kenny Everett. Yes, thank you. No, that was... it's funny I mentioned Kenny earlier because I used to see him on my travels around, oh gosh, everywhere really, where I went, whether it was in theatres or TV studios, and certainly at Thames TV. And I just always wanted to. I thought he was such a bewitching broadcaster, particularly on radio. I loved his radio shows and the way he would record jingles and himself and sing them and multi-track them and come up with amazing characters, quite similar to Mike Angelo characters, really, with things like Captain Kremen, his space series, which is just fantastic. I think you can listen to them all on one recording, actually, but it's brilliantly done. And again, if I go back to your question about comic idols, Kenny was certainly one of them. And he was a true comedy hero of mine, mainly because of his radio work. He was a voice that spoke to me, and I thought, well, you know, the more I researched his character and discovered this incredibly colourful, complex private life, it just seemed the heartland of a great drama. So, yeah, I set about it, and I pitched it to a few broadcasters, and I got it made in 2013, I think, and yeah, it did very well for me. I'm very proud of it. So,
wonderful stuff.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ev, as they would say.
Wonderful stuff. And if people want to follow you online and see what you're up to, I believe you're on Twitter, aren't you?
I am on Twitter, but I'm useless at it. Talking of Kenny Everett and his technological prowess, I'm absolutely hopeless at it. I seem to curse anything with a switch or an LCD screen. I go horribly wrong, and I end up. I probably say something that would offend most of Oxford, or something strange would happen. So I tend to. I'm quite allergic to it, really. But if Anna and I, or if I'm doing something that requires a little bit of publicity, then or marketing, then it's a good way of letting people know what I do. Yeah, and we also have our website featherproductions.com, which is up and running, so you can see what we're doing on that. But yeah, I'm still here, so there we go. My hair isn't, but I am.
Lovely stuff. Well, Tim, it's been an absolute joy to chat with you over this last hour or so and reminisce.
Thank you, Jack. Brilliant. I hope I haven't waffled on.
Not
I
at all.
Have, but there you go.
Not at all. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, all the best.
And you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening, and a big thanks to both Tim and Anna for their support. Do check out their future work with Feather Productions. I'll be back in the new year with a new podcast, and don't forget there's plenty of previous editions available to listen to as well. Until next time, I'll see you soon.